You don't start at zero. You start under a statue, bronze legs in midair, one hand stretched toward forever. You walk into the United Center, and the first thing you see isn't a player. It's a ghost. Jordan didn't just win. He dominated. He broke teams. He built legends. He reshaped basketball. He made 6 championships feel inevitable. And then he left. And he took all of it with him. Now, every season starts with a lie. That this year could be different. That this group might finally figure it out. But it never does. Because when your greatest player is also the greatest player of all time, everything else feels like a disappointment. You don't just lose games. You fail history. You're not allowed to rebuild like normal teams. Because you've seen the peak, you lived at the summit, and now you're stuck trying to breathe in the valley. No team has ever been haunted by success like the Bulls. You don't chase relevance. You chase nostalgia. And that's the curse. Every highlight since '98 is a flicker. Every win feels like a footnote. Every player lives in the shadow of someone they can't become. You don't root for a team, you root for a memory. It ended too clean. Too fast. 6 rings, then silence. No farewell tour, no last run, no slow fade. Just a press conference, a quote about organizations, and a dynasty disassembled before the champagne dried. You were promised something else. They said it wouldn't take long. That greatness was in the walls. That the Bulls weren't just Michael. They were a winning culture. That the rebuild would be sharp, strategic, quick. That was 1999. Since then, a carousel of coaches, draft picks that fizzled, stars that came too late or left too early, front office suits selling you toughness like it's a trophy. You kept waiting, year after year, for the next piece, for the next face, for someone to step out of that damn tunnel and make it feel like 1996 again. They said the Bulls didn't do mediocrity, but they did. A lot of it. You've lived in the middle for decades. Never bad enough to rebuild. Never good enough to believe. Just floating in the memory of a team you haven't seen in 25 years. They told you to trust the organization, that it wasn't about players. It was about the system. But the truth is there was no system. There was just Jordan. And once he left, they never figured out what to do next. For a moment, you had it. You had the script. The hometown kid. South Side born. Quiet, humble, explosive. He didn't talk legacy. He just became it. MVP at 22, youngest ever. The United Center wasn't a museum anymore. It was alive. Every crossover felt like prophecy. Every dunk shook off a little more of the dust from the rafters. And you believed. You believed he would bring it back. That he'd be the one to escape Jordan's shadow without pretending to be him. He didn't fly. He cut through gravity, fast, sharp, angry, like he knew what this city needed. And then, the ACL, Game 1. Up double digits. He drives. He lands. And everything changes. The silence after that fall was louder than anything that came after. You tried to stay hopeful, tried to believe in the comeback. But the timeline stretched. The explosiveness faded. The media turned. The front office distanced. And eventually, the hometown hero walked away in another jersey. You never stopped loving him. But he became a memory before he ever got to become a champion. And now every young player who shows a little flash gets called the next D-Rose. And it hurts. Because you know what that really means. It means they won't be. After Rose, there was no fall, just a slow, endless slide. You weren't rebuilding. You weren't contending. You were floating, year after year, just good enough to finish ninth, just bad enough to get a lottery pick that turns into someone who never breaks 10 points a game. You were sold grit, hard-nosed basketball. High character, guys. You got Robin Lopez punching mascots. You got Rajon Rondo leading a playoff run that lasted 3 games. You got Jimmy Butler carrying everything on his back until he snapped and burned it all down. The front office acted like they were building something. But the plan kept changing. Fred Hoiberg ran pace and space with a roster that couldn't shoot. Then Jim Boylan showed up talking about spirit and made the team run suicides after losses like it was freshman tryouts. And through it all, you kept watching, kept hoping, kept telling yourself maybe this was the year someone would break through. But the games were gray. The team was gray. You didn't lose spectacularly. You just faded. One 41-win season after another. No identity, no future, no bottom. You were in basketball limbo, not in hell. Just stuck in a place where nothing changed and nothing mattered. That's what hurt the most. Not that the Bulls were bad, that they were forgettable. It's not just the players. It never was. It's the suits. It's always been the suits. First, it was Gar Forman and John Paxson, Garpax, the architects of endless mediocrity. Their drafts were safe, their trades were confusing, their quotes were a masterclass in saying nothing at all. They ran the franchise like it was still 1998, like toughness was a strategy, like you could win games by reminding everyone how hard you used to work in the 90s. Then came AK and Eversley. The press conference felt different. You thought maybe, finally, the Bulls had entered the modern NBA. Then they traded for Vooch, extended him, signed DeMar, held on to Zach, let Laurie walk, let Patrick Williams stay. They didn't build a core. They glued one together and called it progress. You weren't contending. You weren't tanking. You were stuck again, only this time with fewer excuses. Every move felt like it came 6 months too late. Every extension was a hedge. Every quote was a shrug. Other franchises innovate. The Bulls recycle. You can't remember the last time this front office made a move that actually felt like it had a plan. You don't trust them. You don't even know what they want. Because they talk like visionaries and act like caretakers. You don't need caretakers. You need leaders. And you haven't had those since Jordan left. You don't know what this team is. Contender? Rebuilder? Play-in pest? Tank artist? Depends on the month. Depends on the injury report. Depends on how many times Zach LaVine got mentioned in trade rumors that week. One night, they look locked in. DeMar's cooking. Vooch is active. Bench mob gives you energy. You beat the Bucks, and Twitter says, don't sleep on the Bulls. 2 nights later, you lose to the Hornets. Give up a 17-2 run in the fourth. Billy Donovan says something vague about execution. And it's back to square one. You're not building toward anything. You're surviving everything. Your young players are too old to be prospects. Your veterans are too good to tank and too flawed to win. You're not planning. You're reacting. Front office says, we believe in the group, but they won't extend Patrick Williams. They won't trade Zach. They won't blow it up. They won't commit. It's like everyone's afraid to pick a direction in case it's the wrong one. So you stay in the middle, stuck, again. You watch teams rebuild from scratch and leapfrog you in 3 years. You've been trying to climb the same hill since 2015, and the view hasn't changed. You had a plan once, and for 35 games, it worked. Lonzo at the point, Caruso flying around, Zach and DeMar playing free, Vooch cleaning up the mess. The ball moved. The defense clicked. You were first in the East. It felt real. Then his knee gave out, just like that. No contact, no warning, just pain that never left. They said 6 weeks, then 6 months, then indefinitely. You kept waiting. For updates, for progress, for something. But the news only got worse. Cartilage issues, another surgery, maybe career ending. Lonzo didn't just run the offense. He was the identity. Fast, smart, unselfish. He made the chaos make sense. Without him, it all fell apart. The defense slipped. The pace slowed. Zach started dribbling into nowhere. Vooch floated to the three-point line and stayed there. And that was it. The most promising version of the post-Rose Bulls died in 35 games, and no one talks about it. But you remember, because that was the last time this team looked like it knew where it was going. You traded 2 firsts for a big man in a league that was done with big men. You told yourself it made sense. Vooch could stretch the floor. He was a walking double-double, a stabilizer, a piece. But he wasn't the future, and he wasn't enough. He puts up numbers. 18 and 10 most nights. Soft hands, solid footwork. But it never leads to wins. Never bends a defense. Never changes the ceiling. You gave up Wendell Carter Jr. You gave up a pick that became Franz Wagner. You gave up the future to finish 10th. And then you extended him. Because why? Continuity? Loyalty? He's not the problem. But he's the proof that this front office can't commit to a rebuild. That this team would rather stay respectable than take the risk of being great. You don't blame Vooch. He plays hard. He shows up. But every time he goes 7 for 16 with a quiet 17, you wonder what the plan was. What it was supposed to become. And then you realize, this is it. You're watching the plan, night after night, and it never leads anywhere. He's your star, your max guy, your #1 option. By default more than destiny. He can score 30 in his sleep. Silky jumper, bounce for days, a walking highlight. And yet, the gym feels quiet when he scores. He hits 5 threes in a row and the game still feels close. He drops 41 and you still lose by 12. He dribbles, he rises, he fires, and nobody moves. Because you don't know what it means anymore. Is he part of the future, or just waiting to get traded? One week he's talking about loyalty. The next, his camp is leaking to shams. He's not a villain. He's not a savior. He's a question mark in a jersey that's supposed to give you answers. You've watched him grow, watched him evolve from empty stats to all-star, watched him battle injuries, carry bad teams, hit big shots, but you've also watched him disappear in the fourth. Watched him jog back on defense, watched him throw up his hands and check out mentally for quarters at a time. You want to believe. But belief needs direction. And this team doesn't have one. So Zach floats. And so do you. Not loved like D-Rose, not hated like Jimmy was, just stuck, too good to dump, too flawed to build around. You keep waiting for the trade, or the breakout, or the answer. But all you get is limbo. You can't even lose correctly. The one year you finally pull the plug, you finish 11th, too good for the top 5, too bad to make the play-in. You lose the coin flip, the Spurs get Wembanyama. You get pick 11. You watch him debut with a block, a dunk, and a generation of hope. You watch highlights with the volume off. You're not cursed. You're just unlucky and uncommitted. You don't go full rebuild. You don't go full win now. You hover. And the lottery doesn't reward hovering. You've picked 7th so many times it's practically your brand. You've drafted upside, you've drafted NBA ready, you've drafted potential. And now you're out of picks, out of cap space, out of timeline. You see teams bottom out and bounce back in 3 years. OKC, Houston, Detroit almost. You tank for one offseason and call it a strategy. But you're not built for the long game. Not with this front office, not with this ownership, not with this fear of being bad for too long. So you stay here, in no man's land, in draft night purgatory. Not terrible, just tank-proof. It's been 25 years, and they're still playing his highlights. Every halftime, every intro video, every promo package. You know them by heart. The shrug, the double nickel, the last shot in Utah, and it still gives you chills. But it also makes you ache, because the greatest thing your franchise ever did is still the only thing it talks about. You walk into the United Center, and it's a shrine. Statues, murals, banners. The house that Mike built, and no one has dared to redecorate since. New players walk in and have to explain they're not trying to be him. That they respect the past but want to make their own mark. But the building doesn't care. It only responds to ghosts. It's not fair, but it's what you signed up for. Other teams celebrate their present. You market your museum. You wear throwbacks to avoid facing the future. You keep Jordan on the screen because nothing on the court is worth showing. You're not a franchise. You're a memory. And the worst part? It still sells. Not because you're the worst. You're not. You win just enough to keep it interesting. You lose just enough to keep it hopeless. Not because you've never had greatness. You had the greatest. And maybe that's the problem. You tasted basketball perfection. You saw the blueprint. And now everything feels like a cheap replica. Every season you tell yourself it could be different. A breakout, a bounce back, a miracle run. But deep down, you know the truth. You're stuck. In the middle, in the past, in a system too scared to blow it up and too broken to build on. You watch other teams leap forward while you debate whether to extend your 8th man. You listen to ownership talk about competing while other franchises talk about winning. And still, you care. You wear the jersey. You post the highlights. You defend Zach one night and trade him in your head the next. You whisper D-Rose's name when no one's around. You tear up during the Jordan montage. Again, you keep believing. That's what makes it worse. Not the losses, not the front office, not the missed picks, the wasted years, or the stars that walked away. What makes it suck is how badly you still want it to work, and how deep down, a part of you still thinks it will.